Now, what's up, everybody? Wellness Week Live. Hey, big shout out to all of our veterans. Happy Veterans Day, and thank you to all of the men and women who put it on the line for our country. Because without a military is a country's immune system. We need a military. So, thank you to all of our veterans here today. And if you're watching and you're a veteran, listening, you're a veteran, thank you very much for your service. I want to talk to you about a special veteran, my dad, who is a veteran, and you know. I would be remiss if I didn't talk about my father, not only his military service to our country, but his story, who he is as a person. Because, we see veterans and we think, hey, veteran, but all of our veterans have a story. All of our veterans are humans. All of our veterans have hopes and dreams and fears and accomplishments and failures. And so veterans are human beings. They're us, right? They're people who step up, but they are us. They are our fellow neighbors and family and citizens. So, and all of us, right? All humans have a story. So this is Veterans Day, and I wanted to share my father's story. And just to say, if I say, "Oh, thank you to the veterans," which I just did, that's cool. But I don't think we fully understand what many veterans, not all, but many veterans have to go through when they're veterans, when they fight. Many veterans, and I know a number of them, have to kill in our name, have to do really bad things in our name. And that's why veterans have the highest suicide rates. That's why veterans have PTSD. That's why veterans commit suicide in larger numbers than the regular population. That's why veterans have drug problems. Alcohol is a drug. They have alcoholism in greater numbers in the veteran community, and drug addiction in greater numbers in the community, and homelessness in the veterans community. We owe our brothers and sisters, we owe our veterans more, better. Now, not all veterans have those problems, but a lot do. And a lot do because, especially the men and women who fight frontline, that shit will fuck your brain up. And I don't know because I didn't serve. Okay. But I have friends and people that I know who told me that, they had to kill very young people. They had to kill and do things that they had a split second to react. And sometimes they made the right decision, and oftentimes they did not. But it's kill or be killed. You're in war, and we don't fully understand that. I think as Americans, me and you, if you're watching and you're not a veteran, like I'm not a veteran, we tend to watch too many movies, and it makes war glamorous, ah, yeah, yeah, and we don't get to see what happens when they come home. What happens, when they're wrestling with the demons from years past, the hurt, the pain. And only a fellow veteran can know that. And not many people serve, statistically and percentage wise. I don't, very, very few Americans serve, and very, very few Americans see frontline, killing combat. Even people who are in the military, most people in the military do not fight frontline. And that's not to take anything away from the men and women who are in the military, because without the support staff, the men and women on the front line can't do their job. So, no matter who you are, again, thank you. You stepped up, and all military veterans are expected to fight and die if need be. So even if they don't agree and sign up for frontline duty, their number one job is to fight, kill, and die if need be. That's why you go to basic training and you learn how to use a gun. Why? That's your first role. It's not to be the chef or the logistics person on the computer or the whatever mechanic. That's your second job. Your first job is, if need be, we're putting you out there and you're gonna kill or be killed. So, again, my hat's off to all the men and women out there. But I want to do this show for that too, because our vets deserve something better, and they're suffering because they have to do a lot. And by the way, even the vets that are operating drones, right, and they're pressing a button from 5,000 miles away and they're having to kill, those vets suffer because that's a type of front line. They're being asked to do things, and although it's not bloody, and it's not hand-to-hand combat, our men and women are asked again, oftentimes, to do very, very difficult things, and we don't see that. We just see the glory and and the parades and the action figures and the commercials and pat them on the back. Good, thank you for your service, man. Thank you for your service. But we don't fully understand. You know, um, we haven't walked in their shoes. So, if you are a vet and you are suffering, you can dial 988. That's free anonymous help. You can go to betterhelp.com. They should be paying me, but they're not. I use betterhelp.com. It's online FaceTime on your phone therapy. I love it. It's not anonymous, but it is private. And anyway, so my father is a vet, and my father has frontline experience in Vietnam. So, now every vet, frontline or not, has their own story, their own experience. But this is my dad's story. So, and to tell the story, I want to take you back because before my father served in Vietnam, my father was in the Air Force, and he was a co-pilot in jet fighters and did reconnaissance missions. He was combat photography, combat videography. Before there was fancy drones, my father was the drone, and him and the pilot would fly over enemy territory and risk their lives being shot at and all that stuff. My father flew over 100 sorties. If you know what a sortie is a mission. My father flew 100 times, over 100 times, into enemy territory where they're not fucking around. Like, if the North Vietnamese or the Viet Cong get you, they're going to make ISIS and Al Qaeda look like a cakewalk. They're going to make ISIS and Al Qaeda look like junior varsity. You don't want to get caught by the VC. You're better off, if you get caught, just off yourself, because that's how bad it was. And not to take anything away from our men and women who are fighting the terrorists now. I wouldn't want to be caught by the terrorist ISIS or Al Qaeda either. But but let's rewind a little bit. So this the service that my dad, when my father was an orphan, actually. So when he was born, he had no mother, no father. So if you think Vietnam was sad and bad, my father had no Father's Day, no Mother's Day, no Christmas, no birthday, no first birthdays, no, oh yeah, first birthday for our little boy. Oh yeah, his first bicycle. Oh yeah, his first vacation. Oh yeah, there was no. His mother died shortly after he was born, and his father just never there. So no father, no mother. Now, did my father have some tertiary distant relatives here and there? Yeah. But again, no Mother's Day, no father. I know criminals that have Mother's Days and Christmases. My father didn't have that. So, that is colder and sadder than most wars. I mean, think about that, right? So, my dad, when it was time after high school, goes to join the military. And he wanted to join to serve his country back then in the 60s, very patriotic, and also wanted to join to have some kind of semblance of family because he had nothing. So he goes to join the Army, during the beginning of the Vietnam War, and the Army rejects him, Navy rejects him, Marines reject him because my father had a medical exemption. He didn't even have to fight. Now, I was like, Dad, why the hell would you go fight? You got to, everyone's trying to dodge this damn war. Like, shit, you got the out, man. Like, he had bad feet. He had flat feet. So if you had flat feet back then, bad feet, problematic feet, would be no use in the jungle and marching and things like that. So he had the out. But my father's a badass, man. He definitely, he kept on pushing. And so the Air Force took him, I guess, because you'll they thought maybe you'd be flying more and you won't be on the ground marching, who knows. But the Air Force takes him. And so he wanted to serve his country, and he wanted to again get a semblance of family because he didn't have that. And I get it. Vietnam War is the bad war, and no war is really good, but the Vietnam War was not the, hey, mission accomplished, boys, and parade in New York, like none of that stuff. So my father was in the bad war, and I understand why it's the bad war. I get it. But again, going back to what I said, every country needs a military. A country's military is its immune system. The problem comes in when you get these slimy politicians that throw our boys in the grinder. That's the problem. Our boys and girls don't make policy. So we have to be able to delineate and separate that. Uh, I'm proud of my dad for him stepping up because our boys, again, don't write policy. They're here to protect and they go in with good hearts and wanted to do the right thing. So again, big shout out to our vets. So my dad um, signs up knowing in the mid 60s that, more than likely you're going to go off to Vietnam. Not a popular war. Even back then, not a popular war. Uh, and so he's off. And I said, Dad, like, is it, was it a foregone conclusion that you would go to Vietnam? And he's like, not everybody went to Vietnam, but it was, if you were joining in the mid 60s, you're probably going to go to Vietnam. So he said to me that one telltale sign that you knew you were going to Vietnam was if you got shipped off from New Jersey or the East Coast to California. If that happened, you're going to Nam. And sure enough, that's what happened to my dad. So they didn't tell him he was going to Vietnam. It's just, oh yeah, you're going to be going to Cali for a little while. Ding, 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 dog whistle, you're going to Nam. So when you got those orders, it was pretty grim. And I asked my dad, I said, Dad, what when you went and you were flying over the Pacific to go into Vietnam, like how was it on the plane? Like was everybody like gun ho? Was everybody kind of stoic and quiet? Like what was it? And he said, well, it depended on who you are, row to row in the plane going over to Nam from Cali. Yeah, some guys were crying, some guys were quiet, some guys were gun ho, some guys were indifferent. And my dad said, I said, well, how did you feel? He's like, well, my father said that he was just wanted to get it over with and just kind of like hurry up and die. Like, just let's get it over with, And I was like, oh, yo, man. All right. So he gets into country. And again, my father was frontline experience because part of my father's job in combat photography back in the late 60s was to do recon over enemy territory. That's northern Vietnam. So you take your camera and photos, and you fly in jet fighters and bombers and all different types of planes. My father's plane of choice, or the plane that he was in oftentimes, was called the F-4 Phantom. Look it up, really badass jet fighter. And supersonic speeds, could fly super high, super fast. However, you're going over enemy territory, and the enemies, sure enough, my father said, like, yeah, they, he saw plenty of ordnance coming his way. And so I asked him, like, you get there, you're in country and doing the 100 missions. I mean, I would have shat my pants after one and I would have been insubordinate. I'd be like, no, fuck. I would have been like, I'm done. No, no, no. Over 100. So honestly, I'm surprised my dad made it. Like, I'm surprised he made it home. I would have bet money against him, hands down. And if you do the stats and read up on that, any kind of, you know, pilot and stuff like that, door gunners, etc., you're in the air, it's not good news for you. So yeah, so my father's job was to do recon, take photos, take videos of enemy positioning all across Vietnam, South Vietnam. But he also was responsible for not only doing recon, but when shit popped off, my father's job was to not grab a gun, grab a camera, and film the fights happening. So can you imagine? Like, everyone else is grabbing guns and rocket launchers, and you're grabbing a camera to go film the fight happening. You have no defense other than maybe you had a handgun, but like, what's that going to do when it's like, okay, guys, there's a fight happening. Like, drop in Ralph and let him film. I mean, my stomach is getting queasy right now thinking of that. But that's my father's job, dude, and he did it, and that's pretty badass. Especially because he didn't have to do any of this shit. He could have sat home like a lot of draft dodgers did. And I don't blame anybody for, honestly, I don't blame anybody for dodging the draft. Truth be told, I probably would have went to Canada myself. I'm not bullshitting you. Like, I would have been like, yeah. So my father's got some fucking brass. So so he joins, and then when my father came home from Vietnam, I think right? It was hush hush, no parades. There was a lot of people that Americans that literally spit on our vets. So my father came home to, I mean, at that time he was dating my mother and he didn't have a family. So he had my mother's family. And he came home to, I'm sure, a family welcome, but it wasn't like, a parade down the Canyon of Heroes and, pats on the back. It was more like, come home, shut up, and just go about your life quiet. And that sucks because back then they couldn't talk to anybody. It wasn't like World War One or World War Two, or Iraq One or Iraq Two or Afghanistan, where there was a built-in kind of celebration for our vets, rightfully so, and help. Vietnam was probably one of the first wars where, like, yeah, you were despised because you went to Vietnam. And again, these soldiers didn't make the fucking policies. Don't hate the soldiers. Go hate the people who signed us up for this shit. Go hate the politicians. And so my father came home to New Jersey. From all accounts that I see and heard, just you know, come home and act like nothing happened. And that's horrible. There should have been some kind of therapy for everyone. There should have been some, long-term debriefing. Uh, there should have been therapy and psychologists and people to help, but our men and the women, by the way, hundreds of women served in Vietnam, front line, as nurses and medics, etc. Seeing the horrors and horrors of war, and just, yeah, you have to come home and act like nothing happened, and you can't speak about it because our country hates you, all the Hanoi Janes and stuff. So it's sad. I'm happy to say though, now, like starting in the early 2010s and stuff, our Vietnam vets eventually got the recognition that they deserve and the appreciation they deserved for, understandably, a war that was not popular. Understandable, and I know why. But you know, when I see a Vietnam War vet, especially, I make sure I say thank you for their service, for their willingness to step up. Because again, without a military, a country doesn't have an immune system. So someone's got to step up. So, I'm grateful that our Vietnam vets got the recognition they deserved for their willingness to put it on the line, no matter where or what, for us. So my father and the other vets got that recognition later. A little too late for many because they didn't get a chance to see that, but better late than never, and they've gotten that. So I'm happy that my father can wear his veteran's hat and stand up tall and proud, for what he and so many thousands did, and so many of those men and women died, for our country. You know, my father, if anybody had an excuse to be a shitbag, if anybody had an excuse to run the streets and do crime and be a real low life, my father had plenty of excuses to do that. You know, um, my father came home. My father's always a good person, law abiding. I'm sure he's no saint, but you know what I'm saying? Like, he didn't eh, go around hurting others and committing crimes and, oh excuse, oh yeah, my upbringing. My father, you make a choice in life, and the reason why I'm saying that is because if you're listening to this and you're going down the wrong path, you have agency, you have power. You don't have to do crimes. You don't have to be doing bad things. My father is a perfect example, an orphan, no mother, no father, Vietnam War vet, comes home not appreciated. My father has no advantages, well, disadvantages, born in Hell's Kitchen, New York City in the 40s, but goes on to have a great life, raise a family, married 50 something years now, still to the same woman. They're both still married. My parents are both alive, annoying the shit out of me. But, anyways, my father made a choice, to do good and be good. And you can do that. Anyone can do that. My father is a human being like anybody. He doesn't have any special magic pixie dust. So, my father oftentimes says, oh, I'm pissed that I didn't become anything. I didn't do anything. I wasn't successful. And I always tell him, I say, Dad, you are successful. You're basing it on what? Because you don't have $1 billion. So if you don't have $1 billion, you're not successful. I know billionaires, and some of them are shitheads. Some of them are bad people. So my father is a very successful person because not only did he come from nothing, because nothing is a neutral. He came from negative numbers, and he went on to have a successful family. Worked hard in his life, provided for us, and he gives back. He's involved with the Veterans VFW to this day, helping others and doing charity and involved in his church, in our church and stuff like that. So I always tell my dad, Dad, you are successful. You don't say that around me because I know that you are successful. You're very successful. So, um, it's yeah. So my father is a stoic type of guy. You can imagine he's not the warm and fuzzy guy, but good man, good dude. And so that's what I wanted to share with you. The story of that particular veteran, my dad, my father. And what I was going to say is, you know, I kind of got a lot of this information a little while back when I went to go take my dad to go see Top Gun Part Two, Maverick. And I never knew because my father was one, like a lot of vets, they don't talk about their service like that. And I said, hey, Dad, when you were in Vietnam, like I always thought my father flew. I knew my father flew, and so I was like, I always thought he only flew like once or twice because I'm like, what do you think of that Tom Cruise movie? And he's like, yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm like, by the way, how many missions did you fly? And then he just told me a couple of years ago. He's like, yeah, like over 100. I'm like, holy shit, over 100 sorties. Like I'm surprised you're alive. No shit. Like honestly, I'm surprised that this old man's alive, especially growing up the way he did in the streets and no advantages. And so, um, but yeah, so big shout out to my dad. Big shout out to all the men and women who put it on the line. I don't care if you're an accountant in the military or you're a Navy SEAL slugging it out, on the front lines. You are a team. Everyone needs everyone. The heart is no more important than the brain, than the lungs. Everything comes together. So, but yeah, no, it's pretty cool that my father was up there in the clouds, in the stratosphere, in the F-4 Phantom and other types of planes doing recon. It is a miracle he did not get shot down because, again, not good. But I know my father is proud of his service, and we're proud of him. New Jersey's proud of him. I know our country's proud of him, and all the men and women, that go to serve our country. Again, I can't say it enough. So you got a lot of you got a lot of brass. So I salute you and thank you, everybody, and thank you again for watching this. And thanks, Dad. So I'm out of here, everybody. All right, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Thank you. Bye.